Now then, we're back, and most importantly, you're back. Spilling the Beans, episode number 2. And it might be worth pointing out something that could be a little bit of a pattern here, because last season, when we relaunched the fanzine, on the first day it went on sale, we battered Port Vale 4-0. Now, we launched the podcast last week, and what happens? We get that much needed, just what the doctor ordered win. Coincidence? We'll let you decide. And this week, it's a trip to Crawley, fresh off the news that Gatwick is getting a second runway, which will make them flights from Wally International to Gatwick a breeze now, eh? We'll introduce our guests soon, and we'll chat the ins and outs of that victory against Crewe and everything about the up-and-coming trip to Crawley. But before I do, we just want to say a special thank you for Cooper T for allowing us to use their record Mistakes as the intro and outro for this podcast. Type that into YouTube, Cooper T Mistakes, watch the video, you might just recognise the town where it's shot. Oh, and don't forget, the brand new edition of Beans is on its way, and you can still grab the first one online, along with all of our merch. Hats for match day, t-shirts for sauna days, the lot. Right then, let's spill some beans.
Meet the gang, 'cause the boys are here, the boys to entertain you.
And once again, we've got a lovely panel of guests. Let me just introduce them. For his sins is Dave Ingham, A590 enthusiast. Where does that come from, Dave? What are you so enthusiastic about with the A590?
Well, it's the finest road in the country, isn't it? You know, it takes you past the Lake District, you see Morecambe Bay, and it just leads you directly to the mecca of modern football, which is the soccer. So, best road in the country, surely.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with that. And also with us today is a man who thought the north-east coast of Scotland wasn't cold, wet, windy, or dark enough. He moved to Barrow. How are you, Steve?
I'm absolutely fine, thank you. Yes, it's gloriously lovely here in Barrow and Furness actually today. It must have, the royal visit seems to have brought the weather. And yes, I dare say for the next, 30 seconds or so, it's not bucketing with rain. So absolutely fabulous, really, and very happy to be here.
Wonderful. I think even on the game on Saturday, I think Barrow was one of the few places that seemed to avoid the downpours. I've seen a video from everywhere, from Gateshead to Blackburn, where they could hardly even get a game of football on.
I would say there was a bit of I'd say we had a customary amount of downpour. I mean, it's not. It was fairly biblical in places, I think. I suspect it's more that really we kind of tend to shrug off the weather system while complaining about it constantly at the same time. Which is very much the Barrow way, I think.
It certainly is. And with that in mind, let's cut to our first section of the podcast, which is the week that was.
That was the week that was. It's over, let it go.
So, we won a game of football. Crewe at home after last week's, well, I wouldn't say doom and gloom, but certainly a dose of reality from Phil and Dave. We went out, I think we spoke about hope, really digging in and getting a performance, and it seems like we got that. Dave, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, it was everything that we asked for. I think 1 to 11, they were at it. We had a good start. The crowd stuck with them, even though it was, we hadn't scored in the first half. It was generally positive going into half time, and it was just I think everything that we kind of picked on last week came to fruition. We got big performances from some of our big players. So MJ Williams coming back was fantastic. Obviously Isaac Fletcher getting his goal, but an all-round good performance. And I think I'm not really one for stats, but I kind of had a bit of a browse on Saturday night, and something that struck me was that the possession stats and the most number of passes and all that sort of thing, Crewe were top 3 in those for the game, but we won the duels. We were top 3 for the duels, and that's what I want, to be honest. I'm not really bothered about watching the opposition pass it around 27, short, neat passes across the halfway line. You do that, lads, you crack on. But once it gets into the danger areas, or once the 50-50s are in play, I want to see us winning them, especially at home, and that's what we did. So credit all round, credit to the coaching staff and Andy Wing. Great day.
Yeah, you mentioned last week, Dave, that we weren't sure who our rocks were, where that sort of nucleus was. How crucial do you think MJ Williams is to be in that?
Do you know, after we finished recording, I was thinking that I was maybe being a bit harsh by not giving MJ Williams a name check, because I think he showed last season that he's got the capability of being, a real leader in the team, whether that's in midfield, whether that's centre half. I suppose it was just the name of Canavan that came to me mind during the recording last week. But yeah, two players that have come back that we know that can do the job from last season. So MJ Williams, Isaac Fletcher, two good players, and it makes all the difference. And hopefully, we'll have Ben Whitfield coming back. He's available for selection this weekend. Raheem Harper, who again potentially could be one of those leaders, and just ever so slightly, we kind of turn that kaleidoscope a little, and it becomes a bit clearer about what sort of team we could be if we hit our straps week in, week out.
Yeah, Steve, what can you add to that?
I'm delighted about it. I enjoyed the kaleidoscope version very much. I think definitely it was more brighter. I mean, it's very difficult to disagree with any of that. I mean, certainly when what Dave says about rocks is right. I mean, MJ Williams was absolutely titanic on Saturday. He was everywhere. His work rate, his stability. I always think he's a bit like he's very, very astute in his positioning, so that he's in a position, so that he's always ready to be able to shut the door as well. What we see, he's a bit like a sort of rather annoying steward in a really posh club where he goes, "Sorry, mate, can't go this way. Sorry." No. And he's very good at that, but this time he was actually sort of hammering some people and kicking the door open a bit as well. And I thought he was wonderful. I thought as a side we looked. It was still a bit dour in bits, but then it's League Two football in the rain. You're not. If you want the San Siro or wherever, go in the right month. So it's Barrow. I don't mind that as long as, like Dave says, we're winning the fight. Really, that we're better like that. We're better when it's horrible and dour and difficult and annoying, and we did those things. But to do that, you've got to do the basics properly and in an organised fashion. And although I still have some difficulties with the likes of Jackson, I don't like him on that side. But this was his best performance of the season for me. It was much, much better. I thought Isaac Fletcher. The thing I like about Isaac Fletcher is he's good in both boxes. You need that in League Two. It wasn't just the goal; it was his physicality. He's a big lad. He's got a bit of nastiness about him. He's got a bit of dig. The one time I did speak to him, he's very, very driven to make it work. I'm sure they all are really, but you could really, really see this understanding of what it's going to take. I was impressed. So he wants to get about his business. He knows he's not the finished article, but there was a defensive header that was worthy of any centre half at one stage when we were under the cosh, and he took his goal well. So MJ Williams the best player on the park by miles, but I can see why Isaac Fletcher got man of the match as well. It's about where I am, really.
I might be being biased here as well, but I'm going to say MG Williams the best haircut since Cole Stockton.
Well, I doubt I'm particularly covered to, or do for that matter these days. It's particularly qualified to comment on hair of any description, better than mine. And I'm glad that. Yes, your Buffon seems to be hanging on very well and being modelled beautifully by a younger, fitter man, John.
Yeah, that's it. Me and MJ sharing hairdresser tips. Certainly not the Ken Riley variety, that's for sure. But yeah, I agree with Isaac Fletcher. I think coming into this season, he was one of my hopes, really. I thought if he can keep on improving, he could be that sort of Kean Spence type of find where he's come from the lower leagues. No one really knew much about him before he came to the soccer. Shows them early signs and just keeps on improving throughout his time with Barrow.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I'd say about Kean Spence was I hope he doesn't give us the 20% of the time where he was worrying more about what was next on the horizon, I felt. But it was a wonderful buy, and I do agree with the model. I think it's the model we are more comfortable with and we prefer. I think. What do you think, Dave?
I think he's potentially the perfect candidate for it because he's been released. He's been released from Middlesbrough. He's not sulked. He's got to spend more. He's got games under his belt. it's not glamorous football in Conference North. We all know that, but he's obviously put his mind to it, and he's got his move into League Two, and when his contract runs out, hopefully we'll kind of move it. We'll get the best of him and then move him on for a decent fee. But he's looking one way and one way only, and that's to get back up the pyramid himself. And he's probably got that steel and determination about him to say, do you know what, Middlesbrough, this is what you were wrong to let me go. This is I was a local lad playing for my local club. I'll show you. And yeah, he's got all the attributes. He's a big lad. He's a big unit. He's a lad from Teesside. He's not going to be scared about going 1-on-1 against some a feet artist from Crewe, is he? Cheshire holds no fears to a good Teesside lad. So yeah, I like him. He's a good player.
Yeah, and Isaac Fletcher also seemed to be one of the few people on the World Wide Web who got our MILF Hunters jokes a few weeks back. He seemed to react really, really well for that. You win some, you lose some, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, again, last week on the pod, Steve, as all you listened in, we spoke a lot about the pressure that Wing was under. It was his birthday Saturday, and I suppose he got the best birthday present he could hope for.
I think so. I was delighted for him. I think more came off than didn't, and looking at him, you could sense the desire, and worry really, and stress actually of managing it all. It was interesting personally because I sit really quite near the dugout to see how Kelly was. There was just a moment where Kelly, the Wing was exhorting, and they were having a drink, or there was a break in play, and Kelly got hold of one of the players and was just talking to them really calmly about whatever it was their job was at that point. It's a little bit different, just focusing on the one guy. And that was interesting, and seeing something, and it was just sort of bouncing off, and then he sort of drew back again and let Andy do Andy's thing, and that was really interesting to see, adding a bit of value there. So I'm delighted for Andy Wing. He's a great guy. He means it. He loves it. He absolutely lives and breathes football. Which, believe it or not, they don't all love football. I mean, most of them.
So I've heard, yeah.
Some of the players over the years have, and historically in football, have not particularly had that much love for it. They're just quite good at it. Mm-hmm. But Andy Wing is absolutely addicted to football. Even when he's not working in football, he's talking about football. And so just really pleased for the lad. And fingers crossed, if we could just get a bit more consistency, I think that'd do me for now. It's a massive refit, losing an entire midfield. I think we are slightly underestimating that as a support, how that is not going to just appear immediately at all,
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. It's really coming to realisation now, the quality of Campbell, Gotts and Spence. I think we probably took that a little bit for granted certainly towards the back end of last season, where some of the fan base, Maven myself included, was a little bit, oh, well, you can take them or leave it. If they go, we can get another one in. But I think it's shown so far how difficult that is. You made a good point there, Steve, and I'll come to you on that, Dave. Do you think that's Kelly's first sort of example of what he's bringing to this side now, that performance on Saturday? Do you see a lot of Kelly in that performance?
He probably does. He probably adds more value on the training ground day in, day out than he does on the sidelines. But, I mean, someone sent me a message on Saturday, said, oh, that's the Rob Kelly effect. And I thought that was a bit unfair, because he's adding to the Wing and Pede team. He's not kind of, he's not like the new sheriff in town. He's adding to what we've got. So hopefully, as the season progresses, they'll all continue to work well together. And it's one of them. It's like any team, whether it's a normal workplace or a football team or any other kind of sporting organisation. Everyone's got different strengths. And if we can kind of harness the best of Wing, the best of Pede and the best of Kelly, then, that'll hopefully pay dividends as the season progresses.
Yeah, certainly that's a hope. We struck a bit of gold last week on the podcast, because we got Tim Smokey Robinson in from the Railwaymen podcast, who, as Phil Mack mentioned, sounded all reasoned, articulate, a bit like a Radio 4 presenter, really, for most of his little part of the podcast. And then hit us at the end with that 4-1 prediction for Crew to win. So, which after that on Twitter and Facebook and things like that certainly got a bit of attention. So, yeah, thanks, Tim, for getting us off to a good start there with the engagement levels. But it's worth mentioning a little bit, because I don't know if anyone else feels this, but I always feel like Crew has the biggest head loss every time we beat them. Is that just me, or Steve? Or do you kind of take note of them things, and would you rank Crew high in the head loss count?
I mean, there's a fair. I mean, I suspect we're quite high in the head loss count sometimes when we lose. Yes, I think they're pretty high. I think, yeah, it was a bit sort of custody water to Kenny Katona, really, in terms of the sort of the action. It was, I think, I don't think they're, slightly ironically, because they actually were bottom of the league more than we had been before they got, before we were booted out of the league in the 70s. So that I don't know where the shade that the throw-ins come from, because it's certainly not an overall performance, over a particular amount of that period at least. So I'm not sure why. But they appear to find it absolutely beyond them that little old Barrow, and I don't mind saying that at all when we've stuck two fingers up at them, little old Barrow have managed to turn them over. Notts County are always cracking for a head loss as well. And that's so that, yeah, I mean, the benefit from the geographical location, they probably it's probably spending on a par. It's possibly a bit more expensive, but they've got more people to get. And they just see it as us as I guess more non-league than we are. But I love that. I love it. I love the fact that they don't like it. I love the fact that they're annoyed. That's what makes that's what one of the huge enjoyments about being a Barrow fan is upsetting the status quo in the apple cart, or whatever.
Yeah, just to highlight that, Tim, just to read out his tweet, Barrow are the poorest team I've seen at this level since the 1980s, and that includes one or two basket case clubs. To lose to these 100% because of the way you set up the team should be the final straw. So it sounds like they want rid of Bell. So we'll leave them to it. But I think Phil nailed it on the podcast last week, where he said there's a soft underbelly to Crew. And I feel like that. I feel on the day we can get battered by him 3-0, and that has happened in recent times. But then other days, we just seem to either plough through them or have that performance where they just can't really threaten us. We soak up everything they throw at us, and then we hit them and get that goal. Any sort of thoughts on that, Dave?
Yeah, I saw his tweet about worst since the 1980s, and I thought, well, some of the things that were going on in Crew Alexandra in the 1980s, I'd keep my head down if I was him in terms of throwing shade at other football clubs. I do sometimes wonder who some of these clubs think they are. When the great and the good of football, the Henry Winters and the McIlvanneys and the Northcrofts are sat around at World Cups talking about the giants of the game. It's not usually Juventus, Barcelona, Manchester United and Crew Alexandra or Shrewsbury Town or something like that. I really do wonder, like, the state of the mental health of a lot of League Two fans, because I think a lot of them are deluded, really. It's like when they slag off Barrow as an away day and this, that and the other, and I just think you're going to get a shock of your life when you go to Crew for the first time, because I've taken my daughter there a few times, and it's quite funny, really, that whenever we go anywhere in the country and you can smell that kind of funny cigarettes in the air, and she just turns to me and she goes, "Smells like Crew round here." So it's not Beverly Hills, is it? So yeah, I think sometimes some of these clubs need to just wind the neck in a little bit and just look at themselves rather than having it pop at us. But maybe that's just me being a bit sensitive. I don't know. Yeah,
Nantwich is very lovely, by the way, if you're ever in that part of the world. But to be fair to Tim, I think he mentioned how much he enjoyed Barrow's away day, and that was the only reason he wanted to stay up. Mainly for the trip to Ulverston, it sounds like, but we'll accept that's about the best we can ever hope for. So, but no, it's all part of the fun. So, thanks to Tim for for coming on to the show. And that's a really good segue into our next section of the show. So let's just check our answer machine box. 1 minute. Let me find it. Here we go.
Hello, you've reached the offices of Given Beans. All our Beans operatives are busy getting it forward at the moment. Please leave your message after the beep.
Hi guys, Ben Blackmore here, talking all things Crawley Town, ahead of your trip down to the Broadfield Stadium on Saturday. Now, I've been a Crawley fan for over 20 years and also worked in the media department back in 2013. It's literally the club that started my career and also love of local football. First of all, safe trip down to all the Barrow fans on this mammoth journey. I've no idea if it'll be the longest one you'll take this season, but I'd imagine it won't be far off. Listen, it's been a roller coaster 2 years for the Reds, with a surprise promotion to League One, followed by a disappointing relegation back into the fourth tier of English football. However, there were plenty of reasons for Reds fans to be cheerful over the summer, with the reappointment of promotion-winning manager Scott Lindsay nearer the end of last season, brought 5 wins and 1 draw away to Birmingham in the last 10 league games of the season, which meant despite relegation, the team carried some momentum over into League Two. We also had the takeover this summer. The new owners, KB Sports and Leisure, took over from Wagme United, who you guys may have seen in the headlines for their crypto approach to football. And it was largely met with a positive response from Reds fans. Raf Khalili taking over the reins from Preston Johnson was largely seen as a positive mood for the club, and they've done some great work off the field. For any Barrow fans that are coming down, there's a new lick of paint around the stadium. There's a new away bar facility, so you guys will be able to have a beer in the stadium, which has never been away fans have never been able to do since we joined the Football League. So it's been some really, really positive steps for off the field. And on the field, they were pretty adamant that they were going to change the way they did the transfer policy. Wagme United very much lent on a data-first policy, assigning players based on their stats and different stuff like that. However, they all came out this summer, including the manager, and said they were joined up in thinking about just signing players on merit and pedigree, rather than the data that players shouldn't be signed on a sheet of paper rather than actually on the field of play. It was perhaps a bold move, really, given that the data had found us players that we would never have looked at in our promotion-winning season, including the likes of Clyde Lalos, Jay Williams and Danilo Orsi. The season expectations was very varied, really. The promotion word was mooted a few times from supporters and the manager, but ever so slightly more cautiously rather than kind of optimistically. But most Reds fans were kind of really hoping for a stabilised season with maybe an outside shot at the playoffs. However, the season really has started disastrously for us, with limp defeats to Grimsby and Newport. They were really two really poor performances. However, a rousing performance against MK Dons in the 1-1 draw kind of gave us all hope that maybe our season would get back to where we wanted it to be. But another defeat followed in the form of Tranmere, leaving us 4 defeats from the first 5 games. However, 3 wins in a row over Harrogate, Cheltenham and Aston Villa under-21s in the Pizza Cup basically stabilised our season. We really hoped that we would kick on from there. However, in true Crawley fashion, we performed in a shocking manner in a 4-0 defeat against Notts County on Saturday. However, there's no harm in losing to Notts County, but the manner in which we collapsed, 1-0 down at half-time. The bloke had more than enough space. He had the freedom of Nottingham in the middle of the pitch. And the second half was just purely a collapse. The manager came out and said, look, listen, it's one to forget about. It was the worst performance he's seen for a while. So it should give Barrow fans some real hope that they could come to the Broadfield Stadium and get something based on, obviously, their 1-0 win over Crewe and our 4-0 defeat. I'm hoping we can get back on track. And listen, the first goal is so crucial for Scott Lindsay's Crawley Town. The style of play and the mentality-wise kind of lends towards getting the momentum, getting that first goal. If they go 1-0 down, we really struggle. I mean, most teams statistically do. But I think if Barrow have genuine desire to stay in the game and potentially grab the first goal, stay in the game for 60 minutes, it's what Newport and Tranmere did. Newport scored from our keepers switching off. Tranmere scored from a corner. If they can find a way to score first, then I think it will almost certainly guarantee you guys a result. However, I'm going to go for Crawley 1, Barrow 1. I think Crawley will be licking their wounds from Saturday, but hopefully can bounce back from that really poor performance. Enjoy the game, guys. Safe travels to whoever are coming down for that really long journey. And I hope to see you guys soon. All the best.
Yeah, so that was Ben from Crawley, and big props to Fraser, actually, who's becoming the Given Beans fixer and finding people from all over League Two to bring onto the podcast. I thought we'd struggle with Crawley, but we managed to get Ben from there, so thanks to him for that. Dave, you're off down there this weekend. What's the vibes?
It's another winnable game, but it's also a game that if we're not on our mettle, we can come unstuck. I think they've had a poor start, bit of a brief uptick with a couple of wins before. Obviously, they got hammered on Saturday against Notts County. They've got a good coach, I think. Scott Lindsay done a good job there, and they've got some, what looks like on paper, some dangerous players in terms of Harry McCurdy and Shimanga up front. So again, it's if they click on the day, they could cause us all sorts of problems again, because we've not, our back three's still probably not at full strength with Canavan still being out. The highlight of going to Crawley is always seeing that big football on the roundabout just outside. It's the one distinguishing architectural feature of Crawley, which is a town that was constructed and exists purely to kind of service bags at Gatwick Airport. So it's another one of these towns down south that if there wasn't a major employer tacked on next door, then no one would invent it, would they? Really?
As I mentioned in the intro, they'll be buoyant after announcement of the new runway. Will that lift the spirits of the players, do you think, Steve? And
who can possibly say how exciting it is to once again sail all the way down to wherever the Blazers gap Crawley really is. You sort of enter some netherworld post Birmingham that endlessly goes on, and then arrive in sort of a roundabout in a five-a-side pitch next to it. It's Crawley. I mean, in terms of a record, in recent years, I've been less memorable. I've gone to a few, and I'm going on Saturday now. I didn't think it was, but I am. They've won 4 in the 2020s. They've won 4. We won 3. There's been a draw. Between us. I would suspect home advantage does count sometimes. However, and I've seen some awful performances. I remember there was one particularly awful one that Phil Brown presided over that were most. When you have one of those days where the Barrow support is all happy to raise the ire over the efforts on the pitch. So I think they got a bit of a surprise because we've been, and the following game, the thumped Forest Green, who were top of the league. McCurdy's an interesting player. He has an interesting reputation, certainly around boardrooms as well as within supports, in terms of it either works or it doesn't work. Really, he's a maverick, whatever, which is interesting. He was quite possibly the worst Hibernian player ever in his last incarnation, and that's from a Hibernian fan, and nothing to do with me. So that was a bit disastrous, but then he was decent at Swindon, but then he was a pain at Carlisle, so, he's that sort of a player, but yeah, you're right about on his day. Shimanga, I thought would have played higher. I remember going down there with when we played Boreham Wood with Ian Evatt, and he was he was, we were lucky to get a draw that day, and he was very difficult to manage and scored the goal, I think, if I remember rightly. So I thought he'd do all right. I think it was Peterborough, but here he is back in Chesterfield. I know he was certainly at, but here he is back at Crawley. They're going to be dangerous, and given that our defence has got a bit of a penchant for going missing at points at the moment, you wonder about getting a clean sheet down there. However, they indeed, like Dave says, have not started well, and they're certainly far from unbeatable. So going in there in good heart, and certainly much better heart than we would have been if we hadn't won last Saturday.
Yeah, certainly, and of course, no Rory Feely anymore. He's moved on from Crawley, so we won't be reunited with our ex-player / goalkeeper. Dave, do you miss Rory? How do you?
Do you know? I didn't think Rory Feely was as bad as a lot of people made out, and it's funny. Do you know? On the last, I was driving back from Colchester, the last game, the last season, and I bumped into Aaron Drinnen, who's up front for Swindon Town. I think he's top of the goal scoring list. And we were chatting back and forth about places and clubs and managers and whatever. Very nice young man, very intelligent. And I said something, because obviously he's Irish, I mentioned something about, that we sold Rory Feely into League One. And he was just absolutely dumbfounded. He goes, Rory Feely in League One? And I was like, you're as surprised as we are. We let him go on a free in probably one of the best transfer market, pieces of business we've done. We let him go on a free, then we kind of scuttled back and got him back in the fold, and then we managed to get a fee from him at Christmas and sold him into League One. It was quite discombobulating, that one, but I didn't mind Rory Feely. I always look on the bright side with players like that.
No, I think he's just he probably just reached a little bit of cult status just because of that game against Swindon and stuff, and he was a decent guy, and no doubt he did a role for us. My favourite Rory Feely story actually is when we played Chelsea in the League Cup last year. I was with Burns and we're in the stand, and I think it was their first goal where it might have been João Felix or someone of that kind of standard has just skinned Rory Feely or kind of left him for dead. And as the goal went in, Bertie next to me is going, fucking Rory Feely, this going on, blah, 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 like slagging him off like non-stop. And I didn't really say anything or comment on it. And then I remember looking in front of me, and this young girl had like Feely on the back of a barrow top. And I looked next to her, and there's an elderly guy with Feely on the back of his barrow top. And next to him was an elderly lady with Feely on the back of her barrow top. And then there was like a middle-aged guy. That must be Rory Feely's family there. Very unlikely that a whole family would be turning up. Yeah. So, going into this game and just to kind of bookend that, I mean, what's your kind of hopes for this game, Dave? Are you kind of thinking just come away with something, just kind of keep that momentum up a little bit on the back of last week and just kind of is it more about kind of performance, or how do you kind of judge success this weekend? Yeah,
I'm always happy with the draw away from home, but I think the message is probably the same as last week. We need to turn up, we need to perform, we need to do our jobs, and if that's enough on the day, then brilliant. And if it's not, then you kind of shake the opposition's hand and say, fair play, well done. If you get undone by some individual brilliance, that's sometimes hard to legislate for. But again, it's the big players need to turn up, put in a performance. We might have a bit more on the counter attack if Mr. Whitfield's back in the team. Might have a bit more pace up front. But yeah, it's kind of as brilliant as last week was, and we'll kind of walking out of Holker Street on Saturday, 10 foot tall, thinking, this is it, this is us. We've just got to not get carried away and just, again, it's that phrase, back to basics. Just do the simple things, do them well, do them often, and do them better than Crawley are.
Yeah, there's a video in the head loss that Crew had on Twitter. One put a picture up of all long balls that Crew were playing in. I think he counted maybe 10 or 15 just aimless long balls that Crew were sort of feeding into our box. And all that really highlighted to me was how good Barrow's shape was out of possession. And I suppose it's them basics you're speaking about, Dave, and that we can just making us hard to beat. I mean, that's going to be missing of late, Steve, and I think it'd be kind of good to see that again this weekend, certainly away from home.
Absolutely. Ecstatic with a win, delighted with a draw. I think I am. I am, and satisfied if we end up, and well, not satisfied, but realistic if we end up, if Harry McCurdy lets range a 30-yarder with 2 minutes to go, well, we've competed and turned up, then, that's life in League Two sometimes.
Yeah, and I think also as well it's about the games coming after that, because we've got Shrewsbury at home, and they're pretty much, certainly with Accrington's recent wins, them and Cheltenham are rooted to the bottom of League Two at the moment, so them at home next week has to be targeted for that 3 points. There's Oldham away, so these kind of 3 games here, there's maybe a little bit of expectation from us that we can get a decent points tally from them 3. I wanted to play a little clip that was sent over last week as well, because Steve, you spent your whole day with our Cologne friends that came over in the Barrow hospitality. Let's just hear from Peter a little bit and what he had to say.
Hi, here's Peter from Cologne, and I thought so. So it wasn't the best of Barrow that I have seen, but I'm just glad they've won and maybe got a bit of relief to stay away from the relegation seats, and I hope they can build on that, and I hope that in the near future they will be more successful, play better, and get back to where Barrow belongs.
How long have you been going to Barrow, Peter?
It's been 7 years, over 7 years now that I've watched my first game in Barrow. So I think it was in 2018 in March or something that I came over first, which, to be fair, quite felt a bit like today. But so it's 7 years now, over 7 years from now. And I've seen quite a few games since then.
And you worked in Barrow for a while, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
And stayed on Walney.
I did, yes. Walney was nice. No, I absolutely enjoyed my stay in Barrow and Walney, and I loved being here. I loved living here, and I always felt that, especially in that time, but even every time I came back, I felt so very welcomed here, and it feels a bit like coming home when I come to Barrow every time. And so, I always enjoy being here, and I always enjoy meeting all the lovely people that I met in Barrow. It's nice.
Yeah, Steve, tell us a little about that. Because the club put on a bit of a show for the guys, didn't they?
They absolutely did. I'm really pleased that they made they really, really made the effort to make them look welcome. These lads, a lot of them have done a lot of Barrow games now. I knew at least all but 2 of the 10 or so that were across. Nice mix of people, younger, older, genders, everything. Really good. We had a lovely chat. Peter I know extremely well because he came and worked in Barrow on placement and finished his education, his masters here. Stayed with a local character in General Builder, who we all know extremely well. Shout out to Leachy, and but who looked after him superbly, and he lived here for 3 months and worked in schools, and he has a real love of Barrow, and so that was lovely to see them. But the club made a big effort. There was greetings in German with different things, reasonably translated, well presented. They'd been given the man of the match to do. They were the quality of the sort of welcome and the effort was really, really massive. I mean, the thing about Barrow and hospitality is, even when it's getting a bit of a chasing about some slightly off-kilter or amusing menu suggestions, or how it's presented, or all those other things that are much beloved and can be slightly frustrating sometimes about Barrow. What you can never say is the quality of the welcome from people that are, having people in terms of hospitality in that respect was absolutely, they were absolutely lovely. It's a pleasure and interesting as always to talk to them. You know, you was a bit surreal because you're sort of jumping around from sort of, I don't know, Bromley to Darmstadt and back again, and you know, talking about various different things. They enjoyed it. They love coming to Barrow. You know, and as I've said before, we get Cologne Cathedral and you know, Colch, and they get Walney Island and Dartford. But they seem to be quite happy about that. They enjoy it afterwards, and hopefully, sure Stu certainly will be over there soon. And I hope to see him again as soon as I can.
If anybody wants a bit of history on that relationship between Barrow and FC Köln, and even indeed other German teams all tend to be in that kind of North Westfalen area. Beans did a feature on that. I think off the top of my head it might have been in the maybe the February-March edition, something like that. I can't remember. Yeah, it's somewhere anyway. I'm sure you all know. We'll dig out and share that as part of a celebration of that friendship. And yeah, I suppose that just leaves us to any other business really. I know last week we spoke about some of the Trust bus coming up. Steve, we've got Oldham on sale, I think, is it? And
Oldham's on sale. Walsall's on sale. I think is that it? I think that's it. And they're ready to go. So you know what to do. Let's get going on them. Certainly, both of them should be hopefully well patronised. Looking forward to it.
Yep, certainly. And then lastly from me, the next edition of Given Beans is in production with a deadline, I think, of next Wednesday or so. So if anybody's got any contributions, anything you want to get into the fanzine, please just send it in, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. It's always good to get them contributions and pack that them editions out. So yeah, Steve, Dave, thanks very much. Safe journey down to Crawley. Let's hope we bring back some more points to stick on the board.
Nice one. Cheers, Johnny.
Thanks,
Cheers. Until next time. Bye now. Bye.
Up the Barrow.